People of Reddit who have been abducted by aliens. What's your story? I'm massively late to this thread, but I have a real story. When I was young, the neighborhood kids used to play dark hide and seek or dark capture the flag, often pretty late at night. Our parents were okay with it, as long as we didn't leave the neighborhood. It was the early 90s. We were basically thrown out of the house on the weekends. Anyway, one night after the game was over and everyone had gone home, my stepsister and I were hanging out in our front yard, just sitting on one of those green cable boxes talking. At one point, she stops talking and points into the sky and asks about a light in the sky. I turn and look and see it myself. The light was faint blue and was brighter and bigger than the stairs around it. It was moving in ways that seemed impossible, and it became aware we were looking at it as soon as I locked eyes on it. I don't know how to describe that. I know that it was just this immediate feeling that it was looking right back at us. Suddenly, the light moved towards us almost in the blink of an eye. It went from being roughly double the size of a star in the sky to as bright as an airplane or helicopter searchlight instantly. There was no sound, and the light didn't illuminate the surrounding area, which gave it a weird feeling. I tried to say something to my sister, but I found myself unable to speak, and I could suddenly barely move. I just managed turning my head to see my sister looking very scared, also unable to speak or move. I thought I heard a noise and the light started shining on me, which made me turn my head back towards the object, and then I felt a piercing light basically blind me. I was like bathed in the blue light. After this, things get a bit hazy, like I was meant to not remember it, even though certain moments are as plain as any memory from that time. I was in a place that was mostly dark, but there were lights that seemed to hover by themselves, with no visible technology, pole etc. holding them up. I don't know if I was laying down or standing up, because there was a feeling of no gravity or downward force in any direction. I remember interacting with an entity that was humanesque but seemed to be different, like a beautiful person, but they had no male or female characteristics, completely androgynous, but with very symmetrical and smooth appearance to the face and body. Otherwise, very human looking. They talked to me, but I was acutely aware that it was in my head and not out loud. It was like moments of being conscious with moments of haziness in between. I don't know how to describe it. I was aware that they were doing things to me, but I don't remember what. But I do distinctly remember a piercing device they inserted just behind my ear on my right side. It went pretty deep, but it didn't hurt. It just felt almost itchy for a second, and they told me they were taking a sample and depositing something that would allow them to remotely monitor me for some time. They explained that this was not the first time they had done this to me specifically, and that they would continue to do so throughout my life, and that there were literally thousands of people they were doing this to. It was a scientific study of some kind that they tried to explain to me, but I honestly don't remember the purpose. I was able to ask them a few other things in the moments of being conscious, like where my sister was, and they explained she was having the same thing done to her. I asked them point blank if they were aliens, and they found it humorous and told me they were humans from the future, but I got the distinct feeling that this wasn't the truth. Again, I don't know how to describe why I thought this. It was just a different feeling. When they told me this versus the other things they were saying, it felt like a lie or simplification of some kind. After some time of being out of it again, I became aware that my body was bathed in blue light again, and the darkness started to recede, and I was able to see the stars and the sky again. I don't know how long it was before I really understood where I was, but at some point I sorta came to and realized I was sitting on the grass next to my sister in the neighbor's yard, about 50 to 60 feet from the original spot. My sister came to almost at the same time. We both immediately looked at each other and then to the sky, and the light was gone, but the sun was coming up. It was then we realized it had been hours. We didn't really talk about what happened. We just felt the need to go inside and go to bed before we got in trouble. It was years later before I ever spoke to my sister about that night, and she remembers much less than I do. She remembers seeing the light, being blinded by it, and then feeling weird, and then waking up beside me. To this day, she has explained it away by us seeing a helicopter in the sky and just falling asleep because we were tired. She won't discuss it beyond that. I honestly had forgotten about this event until 2 years ago, when my wife mentioned that I had a spot behind my right ear that kinda looked like a burn mark or a scar, but also like a pimple, mole. She likes to pop things and was dying to let her try to pop it. When she reminded me of it, the memories of the event flooded back into my head, and I was a bit emotional, but agreed to let her mess with it. She tried to pop it, but said nothing came out. It's still there, and looks exactly as she describes it, kinda like a mole, but also kinda like a scar. I've had MRIs and other scans throughout the years, but nothing has ever shown up, so I have no idea what it is or if anything is inside there. I try to not think of it now because although I wasn't scared at the time, it is unnerving to think about now. That's my story as honestly as I remember it. Story 2. It was around 3:50 AM. I'm a night person, so I usually sleep around that time. It was starting to rain outside, and there was a loud constant gust of wind blowing through the cracks near my window. It was eerie, and I had a weird feeling that something bad was going to happen. I looked out the window and noticed nothing amiss, except that the trees were swaying pretty violently, and that one of the trees got uprooted. I turned back and saw 2 aliens by my door. They looked haggard and their backs were bent. They also did not have any limbs, and their heads moved mechanically as though they were automatons. I noticed that the door was closed, so I presume they had just walked through or teleported straight into my room. They were talking in some strange language that seemed to be half human and half alien, and the next thing I knew, I was being tied up in some giant opaque plastic bag. There were holes so I could breathe. Somehow I fell into a deep and peaceful trance. When I woke up, I was in this foreign space. I could see through the holes in the plastic bag. It was as if I was in the sky and everything was floating. Then I heard footsteps. The ringleader, I presumed, came to inspect me. He unzipped the bag, and the moment he saw my face, he lets out an audible "you" and immediately zipped me back up. The next thing I knew, I was back in my bed. Story 3. I never was abducted, but I had this extremely realistic dream probably about 6 to 8 years ago. Now can't remember exactly when, but I still remember vividly. I had gotten in bed, and I didn't even remember falling asleep. Next then I knew it felt like I was moving or being carried away by something, but it didn't feel scary. It actually felt quite peaceful, and I couldn't find it, nor did I care to. I end up laying on this cold slate, naked, in a bright room. Like everything was really light grey, white, and there was a bright light coming from the other end of the room. It seemed like there was some kind of equipment or something behind me, but I couldn't turn my head to see. I felt very sleepy and out of it. Standing over me was about 3 to 4 silhouettes that were alien-like. Definitely not people. They kind of looked like people, but were more lengthy. And they brought out this big probe and probed me, because they wanted to make a human-alien hybrid baby to see how it would live. Felt like only a few hours went by, and they had gotten their alien baby from me, and I was sent back down, woke up. Weirdest dream ever lol. I wonder how my little starseed alien baby is doing. Hope they are thriving.